So we've moved from Neist Point in Skye. Last time you saw me, we were subject to some pretty awful weather. Absolutely fine for me, but my videographer was concerned about his very, very expensive equipment, so we had to pack up, sadly, and move away. We've come down to Portree, the capital of Skye, and we've got a lovely view now across the quayside for the different coloured properties down there, with the view behind to the hills. So we're going to have a go at that. We don't have a great deal of time, so it's a nice way to show you, a quick impressionistic method for plein air painting. I'm just going to be using the Unison pastels on their side to make quick impressions of the buildings, and let's see how we get on and see how long it takes us. So I've just started to map out the drawing using light coloured pastels, just to try and get an idea of location for everything, trying to get the drawing right. I'm not trying to be too precious about it, but because it is buildings, there is an element of detail required. So you just need to take the time it takes to make sure that you get proportions correct, verticals correct, horizontals correct, before we move in with our expressionistic broad strokes with the pastel. Shore comes down here somewhere like that. And I think I've not got too many of the buildings in. There is an element of, there's industrial towers here and a shed here. But I do want to get to the end of the pier so we can get this element of the water, and then the background hills and mountains. So I'm just going to start from top to bottom with the sky. Just going to be really quick, putting in some blue of the sky and then some white for the clouds. This is a kind of off-white, almost yellow. We're late afternoon here, so it's a warm light. Some really nice light on the distant clouds over there at the moment. Try to capture that in amongst the greys as well, the sky. So I'm going to work the colours one over the other. And there is a hint of green in there as well, a muted green. Just drag that quickly over the purple. And as we come forward, it gets a little bit more reddy brown. So I'm just going to get that sense of coloration onto the paper and use that down here as well. There's a nice yellow green in the hills as well. Find something a little bit more green and just drag that gently over the paper. This is a sanded paper called Sate P500, and letting some of the colour that I've just put down show through by scumbling the pastel, so dragging it gently over the paper. Don't want to spend too much longer on this area before moving on to the houses, just to get them down. Let's move on to the trees. The lovely mixture of oranges and russets. So again, just quickly getting them down onto the paper. A really nice red brown, which is working really nicely with the green as a complementary, and a nice dark green sort of working over the sky. And I'll probably come back in with the sky in between the trees to work negatively, so that I'm not just working one thing on top of the other. And there's orange elements in there as well. Let's get a hint of that without going too wild. A nice dark green, and then let's go deeper with a deep purple I'm going to bring this dark down to the rooftops so that they set off nicely against the darks. The colours of the houses. And the water gets darker by the quayside. So come back in with the purple, deep purple, to create that lovely drama of dark against light. And there's some really nice light casting on the water at the moment, so let's get that while we can. And just dragging the pastel gently over the colour that I've put down so far so that it shows through, again, a scumbling action. I just want to be really quick, and as I say, and I call this impressionistic, by which I really mean just using broad strokes. So I do need to take a little bit of time to get the architecture generally right, but I'm not being sort of graphically correct. So there's various cars and vehicles on the quayside. We'll just try and indicate them quickly in a moment. So just a few marks against the building, just to suggest vans and cars. Light against dark, so fortunately there's a dark van against a light one, which is really nice. And various little buildings in the background. Again, we can just indicate we're just popping marks of pastel. Just trying to continue to use the pastel on its side to be nice and expressive. It's beginning to drizzle again. How annoying. To Scotland though, that's what you get. Keep going for as long as we can. Let's try and get some of these houses in before the rain gets too bad. Just put these industrial towers in first. Just indicating these really quickly. So we'll try and get some buildings in. I'm actually just moving the buildings along from where I originally drew them, just to get the drawing correct. Just putting in some windows and doors really quickly. So the scale might not be quite right, but I am making sure I get the right number of windows in the buildings so that they read correctly, at least in that respect. And little flecks of white just to indicate window frames. It's all just tiny little marks. Moving really quickly. Using an indigo just for the dark areas, and then I'll come over it with a white. I'm going to use a purple for the rooftops. And just correct some of the gable features in the drawing in the houses using this. I've not been painting very long here, but we've got the essence of the scene already, I think. I like to get the drawings down, the buildings in really quickly without spending a lot of time finding the exact angles, etc. And then usually when I've got time back in the studio, that's when I'll really concentrate on getting angles and verticals, etc. spot on. But for the moment outside, I just want to get that impression down, get that sense of the subject quickly down on paper. So I'm continuing to look at the sky, which is changing at the moment. It's turning a bit greyer, mistier over the hills. Let's bring some of the clouds down over the hills. Just with a couple of sweeps of the pastel. And again into the trees so we can see some light shining through the branches. Let's make more of the dark in the water down here. That's really quite a feature. So using pastel on its side really quickly, again just to get these stilts in. Where did that boat come from? Oh dear, we've got a big boat now in front of that wasn't there when I started. Let's put it in as it's there. That's just, again, one of these things that you have to take a little bit of time over. Game over. Scottish weather, don't you just love it? So I just put the picture away for a couple of minutes, brought it back out again because the rain has kind of gone off, so it has definitely been affected by rain coming onto the paper. You do not want that to happen, but we can save it just by coming over, you know, what we've already done and just livening it up a little bit. It won't take too much to get back to where we were. It's just the joys of plein air painting. You got to run with the weather, particularly in Scotland, particularly in Skye. I'm just rolling the pastel over these areas just to leave the pigment sitting on the paper. It's a very grey water now. We've livened it up with some blue and yellows. I'm using the pastel marks to indicate the ripples in the water. Again, the eye follows the direction of the pastel, as I always say. We want to vary those directions in the water to give a sense of movement. And let's make sure we get the reflections of the buildings in the water as well. So White House there, yellow here, we're just going to drag that down and across. And the pink. Really makes a nice feature in this picture. Vertical and horizontal strokes. And just an indication of the windows as well, not too much. So this foreground is really dark, dark with pebbles. So I'm just going to quickly map that in. And the shore moves out into the sea quite nicely, like that. And let's find a nice pink for the pebbles. Just dragging the pastel quickly over the top, that impression. So I think the rain's getting going again. We may have to abandon completely. But we've got to a reasonable stage now where I can complete this now back at the studio before we lose it completely to the rain. I think we'll stop there. Okay, so we've come from rain-spattered Portree to sunny Yorkshire. Well, I don't know if it's sunny actually, because we're indoors at the moment in my studio to finish off this painting. We didn't have long at the time at Portree before the weather closed in on us, but as I said, we did get to a nice stage where the essence certainly of the scene was down on paper, and again it's nice and expressive. And I love the fact, I always love, you know, when it's like the Impressionist painting, when they were painting outside, they had bits of sand and bits of dirt and what have you in the painting. You can see here definitely it's been rain spattered and dirt and what have you, which I always like. So I've got a photo reference here that I'm just going to work from my iPad. Again, as I always say, this is just for reference, just as a little bit of a reminder. But the main thing is that I'm going to come back to imagining what it was like as I was stood there at Portree. The fact that I stood there for an hour or two, whatever it was, you know, the memory is there, the colours are there for me to work with. So let's have a look at this one now. I did put in towards the end of the painting this green boat, but I don't really think that that's working very well. So I'm going to take that out, and it's really just going to be a matter of just lifting the painting and just working a little bit more boldly with what we did on the day. Let's go, as I tend to do, from top to bottom. We'll start with the sky, and let's get a little bit more intense blue up here, because there was light shining through every now and again when we were up there. So we'll just make that a little bit more intense. Just really, I'm just holding the pastel very, very lightly. So blending everything together by just dragging these pastels over everything that's there at the moment. And that just makes all these colours work together in the sky as a general sort of moving feast. And let's get a little bit more brightness now against these areas. And now I'm working the pastel a little bit harder into what I've just done. So this is much more about mark making. Just getting a feeling of some light shining through and catching the tops of clouds. The shadows underneath, of course. I'll always remember that. Keep the shadows closer to land, and then you won't go too far wrong. So I'm just going to bring in a little bit of colour with a little bit of pink, just to indicate that late afternoon sun. And also the pink also indicates a rain-laden sky as well at this time of the day. It's quite a nice thing to do. just the pink against the greys and the blues just gives that sense of both late afternoon and also a little bit of rain on its way. I'm just going to bring a little bit of brightness just near the mountain range at the back. Again, to work nicely against the purple and the deep indigo that I've introduced into the mountains. So I always like to just let some of the cloud just mist over the mountains. So I'm just going to drag this a little bit over this area, just over the edges, just softening the edges, just suggesting some mist. I think that's working quite nicely. I'm just going to use this, it's really just almost white, just an off-white, just at the edge of the landscape. Just to accentuate that, take it into the trees. And we've got this area of land that was jutting out. Just accentuate that again. It's getting washed away by the rain. Good. Right. Let's because it's annoying me so much. Let's get rid of this this boat. I find boats so difficult to paint. Certainly, plein air when you're under some degree of time pressure, just to get the proportions right, the angles correct. Anyway, that's my excuse. I'm going to get rid of it because I do actually like the stilts that this pier is on, and the fact that the light and the water is going to show through those stilts. So let's make something of that. Good. So I'm just going to draw the edge of the stilts with a tiny little bit of pastel. I never use pastel pencils. I always use tiny little cut-offs of pastel. If I don't have them, then I'll break a pastel to create it. I'm just going to use this piece of plastic as a hard edge, just to make sure that I get the verticals correct. Use that. Just a piece of paper will generally be fine for doing this sort of thing. There we go. And I can work between the stilts now just to get that extra element of light. And I think that's just more interesting than certainly the way I drew it, that boat. Just for these elements of detail, it's it's worth working on them back at the studio rather than outside when you're under time pressure. It's difficult to get things right necessarily when you're under that kind of pressure. And then the front of the pier was just a series of cars, different colours. I'm not going to try and draw all of them. I'm just going to make a kind of indication of them just by a few marks. Some different colours, a nice blue. Gives you a chance to introduce some colour. Let's find a red. There is a slipway down here, which I'm just going to draw. I'm just going to do it freehand. I'm going to try and get the location right from here to there. So I think that works nicely just to give a nice element of light in amongst all that darkness. I'm just going to accentuate that by a nice bold dark line against what I've just drawn. So I'm just working on these, I think the gas tankers or oil tankers that obviously that they use for the boats, presumably. A bit ugly, unfortunately. But the trees actually come across the top a little bit further than I've got them at the moment. So I'm just going to use that to sort of bring the trees a little bit further over and use that to maybe mask these areas a little bit more, or at least use them to define them a little bit better. Use a dark as well. And it's nice to take that dark into the brightness of the water as well. Again, getting some dark against light. So the buildings ended up not too badly on the day. And I don't want to do too much to them because I quite like the way that they were drawn freestyle, and they have that kind of sense of expressiveness about them because of that. So I'm just doing a little bit of accentuation and some light catching the top of the roofs. That'd be worth putting in. Right, so we're not far off now. It's all just about now building up, I think, the water area. So we're going to bring the darks further down this area using these diagonal strokes. Be a little bit bolder, and then come back with the grey blue back into them, and let's come across them in a vertical way, so that will give interest. You don't want to just always have the same direction of stroke. It adds interest, particularly in water, to have different angles. It just shows a movement in water. And as we did on the day, we can use some of the reflections of the houses to add nice hints of interest. This lovely sort of yellow from that house, just a few dabs. It's kind of popping effects, popping against the dark. Just little marks to show reflection, catching the top of the water. And again, the pink. Let's see if we can find a nice pink. And all I'm really going to do now, just to finish it off, is just with this lighter pastel, just get some extra highlights in amongst these areas. I'm actually just going to embolden the darks underneath the pier. Just bring this out a little bit further from under the stilts as well. A bit of reflection from each of the stilts. And then work back into that with the light working across it. Also going to use that blue. Really pressing the pastel quite hard in now, just to make sure the pigment sits, to get these popping effects. Just little dabs. The light shimmering on the water, that's just going to really lift things. And coming across here from the stilts. In a different direction now. But I'm just leaving this area at the back, as I said, just leaving that flat. Just going to soften it up a little bit there. So the hard marks are towards the foreground. Let's have a little bit of pink as well for interest, because it's going to be reflected from the sky. Just a few marks, don't want to go overboard with that, but it just adds a little bit of colour. Take it into the buildings as well, and the road. Just little reflections, little flicks, even into the trees. These are the best bits, these little poppy highlights. Love doing this. The edges of the trees, maybe even a little bit on this foreground, this mid foreground. So just assess what we've done, soften one or two bits just by coming back. I'm just going to use this blue-grey just to come over generally what we've done. I think we're going to be almost there with this one. It's not taken long at all, actually. So we didn't do a bad job on the day. Happy with that. So I'm glad that we did this particular painting on Skye. We did a lot of landscapes, and the landscape is absolutely wonderful there, but it was nice to do something that showed a little bit of Portree with buildings, a little bit of architecture involved. So as I say, this was the last painting that we did on Skye. I really hope that you've enjoyed this series of pasteling with Unison Colour pastels. Thanks very much to Unison Colour themselves for allowing this to happen. Myself and my videographer Tony have thoroughly enjoyed it. We look forward to doing another one somewhere else in the country, and I look forward to seeing you on that one. Thanks very much.